NC pork. Good for the plate, great for the state. Welcome into another edition of Bold North State Football Daily here on the North Carolina Sports Network, and the favorite show of everybody here in the Bold North State is the Coach Brewster and Coach Collins experience right here with yours truly, Mike Wadell, and the greatest two coaches in the history of North Carolina podcasting. Let's go up and to your left. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the greatest recruiter in the history of college football, former team captain of the Illinois Fighting Illini. We're talking about the pride of Pittsburgh, the one and only Tim Brewster. And then up and to our right here on the Hollywood Squares, we have the pride of Guilford County. He is our defensive coordinator, the master of disaster. He is the former Elon Fighting Christian. He is a national champion, just like Coach Brewster is. And he's with us here for our third season on NCSN. We're talking about Jim Collins. And guys, we have reached an incredible pivot in college football. Rivalry weekend is now in the books. 4 of North Carolina's 7 FBS programs are going bowling. And the ACC Championship is in the Queen City this week. And Duke will play Virginia for the ACC title. Man, it doesn't get any better than this. And if it actually could, because Brewster's second Christmas in December is coming up on Wednesday because it's National Signing Day. And we're going to talk about all of these things over the next hour here on Bold North State Football Daily. And guys, let's start out with Duke. Man, they crushed Wake Forest over the weekend at Wallace Wade Stadium, and they sweep the Big Four for the second straight year. Manny Diaz has never lost to NC State. He's never lost to Wake Forest, and he's never lost to North Carolina. So Jim Collins, you spent time in Durham on the Blue Devil staff under Coach Spurrier, under Coach Cutcliffe. What does that mean to the Blue Devil football faithful, the small, hearty bunch that they are that love Duke football? What does that mean to those fans to have that type of dominance over their in-state brethren?
Well, obviously, anytime you can win in rivalry games, it's a boost to your program and gives you the opportunity to move into bowl season and recruiting season with National Signing Day coming on December the 3rd. So it gives you a lot of momentum moving into it and the opportunity to be able to walk into homes and say, hey, come to Duke. We own the rest of those guys. They can't beat us. So it gives you bragging rights for the year, and then people can walk into your facility and they can see the trophy and the real big trophy, which is that bell that you get for playing the University of North Carolina. So there are a lot of pluses to being 6-0 against your brethren within the state.
We're going to talk more about Duke and their battle with Virginia coming up this weekend a little bit later in the show. But Brew, man, I tell you, on the flip side of that coin, Bill Belichick is 0 for 3 against the Big Four, against Wake Forest, against Duke, and against NC State. But Tim, it's the 5th straight year that North Carolina, 4 under Coach Brown, 1 now under Coach Belichick, 5 straight defeats for the Baby Blue against NC State. And if you're NC State and you're Dave Doeren, and he may have even said this over the weekend, maybe the only reason he's still the head coach at NC State is because he is beating North Carolina like a rented mule. What does that mean to the NC State faithful? And more importantly, from your perspective, a 2-time Tar Heel assistant coach, what does that mean to the Tar Heel faithful that they are just getting owned by NC State?
Hey, congrats to Dave Doen, the NC State Wolfpack. I mean, he has put a huge emphasis on that game. You know, from an emotional standpoint, intensity, physicality, the whole thing. I mean, he's made his football team understand how important this rivalry is to their fan base, to the success of their football team. And you know what? The kids have bought into it, Mike. I mean, they've done a wonderful job with the game. And, you know, we said it last week. If North Carolina did not walk into that stadium with their head on straight, knowing that this was going to be a 4-quarter fist fight, they're going to lose this battle. And they have. And they got to fix it. They got to, the pride of the state of North Carolina, right now, I'm going to tell you what now, there ain't much there when you talk about the battle against the Wolfpack.
Interesting thing here, Mike, that not only has NC State won 5 in a row, they've won 8 out of the last 10 and 10 out of the 13 since Dave Doeren has been there.
It's been an absolute domination in that in-state rivalry, and it was over before it really got too deep in that game. 2 minutes in, you could look on each sideline and you knew that one team wanted to be there and one team wanted to go ahead and start thinking about maybe Tar Heel basketball because the Carolina football team was not engaged. We'll talk more about that a little bit later as well. Guys, as we said, there are 4 bowl teams from North Carolina this year. We've talked about NC State. We talked about Duke. But what about the job being done by Blake Harrell at East Carolina and Jake Dickert at Wake Forest? Both of those first-year coaches have won 8 games in their inaugural campaign. And Tim, I know you have a lot of respect for what is being done at Wake Forest. You've been on the Jake Dickert bandwagon for a while right now. What has been the solid point of his establishing that Demon Deacon program and then bringing them back from where they were a year ago under Dave Clawson?
I think, Mike, that the Demon Deacons preparation week in and week out has been outstanding. And, it doesn't look like they have a lot of ups and downs. It looks like Coach Dickert is going to take a team that's motivated, that's prepared, that's ready to go play to win. Obviously, a very disappointing loss to Duke, this past weekend. But, they've really had a heck of a year. And I think Jake has done a wonderful job.
East Carolina has a proud football tradition, and Jim Collins, you're a native of the bold North State. You know how much it means to the people in Greenville. They have baseball, they have spring football, and then they have football season. Those are their top 3 sports down there. And Coach Harrell has done a great job after being elevated midway through 2024 when East Carolina fired Mike Houston.
Yeah, Blake's done a great job, without a doubt. And I met a few years ago when Blake was the defensive coordinator at the Citadel. I stopped in and we had a long visit. He's a sharp young coach, and his players coach has done a great job motivating those guys. And again, this goes back to the things that we always talk about on this show, Brew, and that is he's picked the right guys for his locker room. And he's picked the right guys for his program, and that helps so much. We want to spend all this money and all in this day and time, but picking the right type people. Everybody does not have to be a 5-star, but they have to fit a role into what you want them to do, and picking the great character and picking the players that fit that enable you to do that. And obviously Coach Dickert and Coach Harrell have been able to do that at both Wake and East Carolina.
Well, those are the teams that have made bowl games here in 2025. What about the 3 teams out of our D1 programs here in North Carolina who were staying at home? UNC under first-year head coach Bill Belichick, Tim Albin and the Charlotte 49ers, and Dal Loggins and the Appalachian State Mountaineers. Appalachian State was pretty close to making a bowl game. They folded late in this game against Arkansas State over the weekend, losing 30-29. And that is just a bone-crushing loss for the Mountaineers. For UNC Charlotte and for North Carolina, it's been a really long season. Is there any advantage that these teams that are not going to the postseason now have to be able to go ahead and get a head start on recruiting the portal, about really focusing in on Wednesday's signing class and trying to get a jump start on 2026? What do you think, Brew?
I think absolutely. Great point by you, Mike, that they have got to take advantage of the head start that they have in recruiting. It's all about play. Tim Albin, he's got to seriously upgrade the talent that he has at Charlotte. And Bill Belichick is doing the same thing. And so, it's just an opportunity to get going, to get your coaches out, get evaluating players, figuring out exactly whether or not you want to sign, how many you want to sign from high school, how much emphasis do you want to put on the portal. And I think the mistake that they make is you put too much emphasis on the portal and not enough emphasis on player development of the high school football player? No, I think that's a huge question, Jim, that you have to ask yourself now is, they're so tempted to dive into the portal and get all these portal guys. And, I'm not so sure that that's the answer across the board.
Well, let me say this, Brew. I've said this since we entered into this era of college football. I think in my brief time in pro football, I learned very quickly, and I'm repeating myself, the people that you select in free agency in pro football, they are who they are. What you see on video is what you're going to pay for. And I don't think it's any different in the transfer portal. I don't know about the staffs at UNC Charlotte or the staff at Appalachian. I don't know if they have enough people to have what I'm going to call the pro personnel staff and a college personnel staff. The pro personnel staff being the transfer portal and being able to go in and evaluate those players. The big difference between the NFL free agency and college free agency is you've got a pro personnel staff that evaluates each of those players each week. They've got a grade on all of them. It's not like they go in and watch a highlight video. They know exactly what they're paying for. So I'm agreeing with you, Brew. The transfer portal can boost what you have, but you better do a great job recruiting high school kids and developing them also.
Every great team has a winning playbook, and every great meal, it starts with North Carolina pork. Bacon for the early tip breakfast. Pulled pork at the arena, that's how you win the day. Behind every bite, NC pig farmers fuel more than $10 billion in economic impact statewide. Great teams execute, great meals deliver. North Carolina pork. Game on, grill on. Learn more at ncpork.org.
Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
You're professional college football coaches. I'm just going to ask you this straight out. If you're hired on December 11th and signing day, the early signing period in 2024 was the 4th, 5th, and 6th of December, you probably missed out on a big chunk of the type of players that you're talking about. I'm talking about the players that you're going to sign from the high school ranks that are going to come in and you're going to groom and develop. So North Carolina was already behind last year. It took for the better part of January for Belichick to get his entire staff up and running at North Carolina, so they didn't have those portal relationships either. I'm not using that as an excuse. It's just basic math. Okay, so right now, North Carolina, they did not retain Brew. The majority of the guys in the building over there, they retained some people, but the entire scouting department under Michael Lombardi is brand new. Was that some type of a tactical mistake by North Carolina not to retain those people through signing date? Would those people have been loyal to the new folks to stick around and do a good job? I mean, was there any type of bad mistakes that were made in that transition last year that could have yielded better results, with the understanding that Belichick wasn't even hired until December 11th, almost a full week after the start of the early signing period last December?
I think by cutting them loose and saying, hey, you're out of here, it really puts them at a little bit of a disadvantage as far as evaluating the players and getting the players, the high school players, evaluated and signed and that type of thing. And to be quite honest with you, it did put Coach Belichick and the Tar Heels behind the eight ball somewhat. They're in a situation right now where they're in a catch-up phase. But I mean, again, he's back to right now after year one. And we said this last week, he's got to make the decisions now, not so much on the players, but on the coaches.
Was part of that decision to remove all of the of the staff that was there, or most of the staff that was there, and not depend on them because you were so arrogant that you thought everybody was going to want to show up and be part of your program? I'm asking now. I've heard this put out there before, but I'm going to be the 33rd NFL team. Come on, man, give me a break, man.
And let me talk about that, because I looked this up because I wanted to see that, and I said those dates a second ago, but I want to repeat them and really drive this point home for the folks watching this. Signing date in 2024, the early period was on December 4th, 5th, and 6th, 3 dates. Belichick was not hired until December 11th. So everybody was still technically employed there unless Bubba Cunningham and the other people in North Carolina, maybe the trustees got involved in that too, got rid of those folks. Okay, so they had missed that date. I think that was the arrogance. To me, the arrogance, not to say that there's not been enough arrogance to go around, but the arrogance was waiting on a guy that was going to come in and not follow that Signetti model of coming with an established coaching staff, of coming with players, of coming with the strength coach to build that culture. The arrogance was waiting and then bringing in a guy who didn't have a staff already, who didn't have players that were going to follow him, who didn't have a strength coach that was going to come in that understood the collegiate model, because Moses, the guy who is the football strength coach at North Carolina right now, is a former strength coach with the Patriots. So I think their early signing period, because of just the timing, whenever Belichick was hired last year, was a major impediment. I think the arrogance came later when they thought that people from the portal were just going to line up to come and play for Belichick. And I don't think that happens. And Brew, that's one of the things that's made you the great recruiter that you are, because you are a relationship guy. Right. And even if you are getting paid, isn't that relationship still an important part of getting people to even listen to your pitch?
It's vitally important. Your personality, your ability to connect with families, with moms, with recruits. And there's been a little bit of talk there that North Carolina doesn't do a great job in connecting with families, in connecting with specific recruits and that type of thing. I think Jim really hit on some good things in what he had to say. And I get the feeling that, Coach Belichick and Lombardi and those guys, they think they do their job better than other people, and they're going to do the job better than other people. And, if somebody had done an evaluation prior to them getting there, then it really probably was dismissed, for the most part, because like Jim, they think they're the 33rd NFL team. I mean, that's crazy to me that you would even put that out there like that. And so I think more than anything else, a lot of, it's a humbling experience going through this transitional first year. And I think it's been a very humbling experience for a number of, Coach Belichick and Lombardi and those guys. I mean, this is not easy. This is hard work. And maybe you thought you were going to, because of your experience in the NFL, you thought you were going to walk in and maybe, do this a whole lot better than it's been done.
Skip the traffic and ride straight to the hardwood with NC by Train. It's basketball season in the Triangle, and whether you're heading to see the Wolfpack, Blue Devils, or Tar Heels, you can leave the parking headaches behind. Enjoy comfortable seats, easy boarding, and fast, reliable service that gets you close to campus for every tip-off, rivalry nights, conference showdowns, and all the magic of college hoops. NC by Train, the smarter, smoother way to get to the big games. Book your trip now at ncbytrain.org. Make it train.
Need to move to North Carolina, within North Carolina, or away from North Carolina? Whether it's the Triangle, the Triad, or beyond, XL Moving and Storage is the company you can trust. Local, reliable, award-winning, and stress-free, XL's team handles every detail so you don't have to. Get your free quote today at xlms.com. That's EXCELMS.com. And tell them David Glenn sent you.
We're going to talk more about North Carolina and NC State and Wake Forest a little bit later in the show. But gentlemen, let's pivot right now back to the Duke Blue Devils. They'll be playing in Charlotte this weekend for the ACC Championship. What an opportunity for Manny Diaz and the Blue Devils to get to that point. They'll be going up against Virginia. And I don't think anybody had Duke, Virginia on their bingo card to be in the ACC Football Championship game back in the summertime. And Coach Brew, Duke's offense continues to explode. 49 points. Darian Mensah, now the school's single season TD passing leader. What do you see in this offensive system that Duke is running that makes it so dangerous?
The biggest thing about offensive football is explosive plays. And Duke, I don't have the numbers right here in front, as far as the explosive passes and the explosive runs, but I would be willing to bet that they are really playing at a high level as far as the explosive plays are concerned. And they're not turning the ball over, Mike. I mean, they're playing the game the way the game's meant to be played. There's no turnovers. They're getting explosive plays. They're playing physical. They've got an outstanding quarterback, and they've got good skill people too. They're able to push the ball down the field and get the ball in the vertical seams. And, they're running the ball well enough. But I'm going to tell you what, like I said, I feel like this is going to be one hell of a matchup because I think both teams are playing at a very high level at the most important premium time. And that's right now in the championship game.
Jim, Duke's defense forced 2 fumbles. Those are explosive plays on defense. They forced those fumbles late in the game this past weekend against Wake Forest, and they controlled the game's momentum in key moments at Wallace Wade Stadium. What stood out to you as you watched that game about how the Duke defense slammed the door on Wake Forest?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that way, Mike. As we look at the end of the first half of that game, that's a game at halftime. And as we go into the third quarter, Duke kicks off. Here are the possessions in the third quarter. 3 plays, 0 yards, punt. 3 plays, 6 yards, punt. 6, 21 yards, interception. And then the last possession of the third quarter was 9, 75 yards for a touchdown. They're now down 35-25 at this point in time. So the third quarter, that transition, that 4-minute and 8-minute and that third quarter was the turning point of the football game, without a doubt. And then you come into the fourth quarter and all of a sudden it becomes a 42-32 game with a 10-play, 83-yard drive by the Demon Deacons. Then when we get to this point, it goes 4 plays, 42 yards and fumble. 1 play, 9 yards and fumble, and all of a sudden we're looking at 49-32 game. So Wake Forest had lots and lots of production in the game offensively, much more than you would expect, 466 total yards in the game. But you cannot turn the ball over. They turned it over 5 times. They fumbled 5 times, lost 3, and threw an interception. That's 4 turnovers, plus they gave up an 80-yard kickoff return that set up another score. You can't win games that way. And that was the Wake MO the entire year, is that they didn't allow those types of plays. They didn't turn it over, and they didn't put their defense in bad positions. They did that in this game. They gave up 42 against Florida State and lost, and they gave up 34 against NC State in a very similar game and lost. That's 3 of their 4 losses right there. Otherwise, they made great progress on defense. But the Blue Devils took advantage of every opportunity. Brew, I'm going to bring this up. Please comment on this. I love the 2 running backs the Blue Devils have. The freshman Shepard has great feet. He jump cuts. He makes cuts all over the place, and he runs physical. And Castle does nothing but move the pile and create yards in short yardage situations and goal line situations. I love both those guys to supplement what the tight end, and the tight end is a very good player. I think it's Halsey, and then the one receiver I really like. So, I'd be interested to hear your take on those guys, Brew.
They've obviously made a commitment to running the football. He's a hell of a thrower. He's a hell of a quarterback, can make all the throws. But I'm going to tell you what, you and I both, this, Jim, is championships are won with great defensive football teams. Championships are won in November and in December running the football. Running the football, and having a physical approach to your mindset And I'm going to tell you, Duke hasn't always been the most physical football team. They haven't always been the biggest and the strongest guys up front. But I'm going to tell you what, like I said last week about the strength coach, Feely, he's done a wonderful job there. As you said, the running backs. I mean, I'm going to tell you what, yards after contact, coach, there's a bunch of yards after contact with these backs, and this, okay? Let's say that Mike Shanahan said this when I was with the Denver Broncos. All explosive runs they're not because of blocks in the interior offensive line. They're because of blocks down the field. Receivers going in second and third level, getting blocks on safeties and staying locked up on corners. And there's just a tremendous sense of pride in what Duke is doing right now. And Manny he deserves a great deal of credit because he's got this football team playing extremely well at the most opportune time of the season.
So you just mentioned it right there. Duke is playing a certain way at this time of the season, but we're going to see something coming up on Saturday down in Charlotte that you rarely see in the world of college football. You're going to see a rematch between two teams, Duke and Virginia, for the second time in 3 weeks, because back on November 15th, Virginia came to Durham. Jim Collins, you were at this game, 34-17. They doubled up Duke, and they were up 17-3 at the break. They had pretty much won this game by the end of the third quarter when they added 14 more points to that. So they were up 31-3. Duke made a comeback late, but Virginia dominated this game. If you're the Duke coaching staff, how do you use that game and the film from that game to try to get the best result out of your second chance against Tony and the Wahoos?
As you said, Mike, I was there, and it was obvious on that day that the University of Virginia was the most physical team at the line of scrimmage. They absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage. They were 12 of 19 on third down in the game, 1 of 2 on fourth down in the game. They had 540 yards, 316 yards passing, 224 yards rushing. So for the Blue Devils to win this game, they got to get off the field on third down. And they've got to limit their Virginia attack, and they got to force the quarterback to beat them. And obviously he can do that with 316 yards passing. Now, Duke has had some issues in the back end with injuries. They can't get it thrown over their head. If you recall that game, there were 2 possessions in that game of a 22-yard throw and a 20-yard throw that there was absolutely nobody near the receiver. That's very unlike a Manny Diaz coach defense. So those are the little things that the Blue Devils have got to do defensively to win this game. They got to get off the field on third down, and they've got to limit the amount of explosive plays that the Wahoos have the opportunity to create.
Brew, Chandler Morris in that game, the Virginia quarterback, 23 of 35 for 316 yards, 2 picks, but 2 touchdowns. But it was the ground game, like you guys just talked about. Jamari Taylor, 18 carries for $133 and 2 scores. This is a guy that could take over this game. If you had to pick one way to go with your offense, if you're Tony Elliott, who are you trying to really make sure, if Duke's going to take something away, would you rather Duke take away your running game with Taylor or your passing game with Morris?
Number one thing is this. Virginia went into Durham on November the 15th, and they whipped Duke's ass, okay? Whipped their ass good. And so it's a mindset thing that's got to get fixed by Duke. I'll be shocked if Duke doesn't come out with just flames coming out of their ears. They're going to be... Virginia's going to say that we're going to run the ball, okay? We're going to run the ball right at you, okay? And we're going to say, may the most physical team win this game. And then once you're really running the ball right at them, downhill, isolation, gap scheme, all those different types of runs that they run, then the play action pass is where you get your explosive plays. Jim just said it, okay? You got to eliminate the explosive plays. Duke's got to eliminate the. Virginia's saying, hey, we got after you're behind a couple weeks back, and we're going to continue. We're going to do it again. This is our formula. We're going to run the ball, and then we're going to play action pass you for some big plays.
They always say in college basketball, we talk basketball a lot here in North Carolina, as we were talking about off the air before we started taping this week's show. They say in basketball, it's tough to beat the same team 3 times in the same year. If you beat an ACC team twice in the regular season, if you meet them again in the tournament, man, it's a hard get. Is it tough to beat the same football team twice in 3 weeks? Have any of you guys ever had that type of engagement where you had to go up against the same team twice in the same year, much less twice in the same month?
Well, let me jump. I coached in the National Football League, and you played everybody twice, and you'd play them 2 times in 3 weeks, 2 times in 4 weeks. The biggest thing you have to be able to do is just adjust your game plans, and you got to ride with what brought you there, okay? And what you're good at is what you're going to do, but you got to have some wrinkles. And I think the team that can come up with some creative, deceptive plays is absolutely huge in games like this, where you're very familiar with each other. You know, a reverse, double reverse pass, hey, quick huddle, quick to the line of scrimmage, Jim. The tight end's lined up as the tackle. It's an old school play. You release a tight end. He's an eligible receiver. The defense sees him as a tackle, and he's free right down the middle of the field, and so just things like that. Have a little fun with it. But the biggest thing is that this is for a championship right here. And to be quite honest with you, how many times has Duke played in the ACC Championship?
1 time.
How many times has Virginia played in it? Never. Holy cow. Okay, so these 2 teams, they're going to be damn excited to be in Charlotte on Saturday, and it ought to be one hell of a football game.
Brew, Jim, who's your pick this week between Duke and Virginia for the ACC Championship? Jim, we'll start with you.
Well, it's interesting that you brought up playing somebody twice. And obviously we did that in the NFL, and we did it when you and I were together in Orlando. We played people twice. I had the experience of playing the same team for the national championship. When we won the national championship at the University of Florida, we had played Florida State in the 11th game of the season, and then came back and played them in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship. So I've been there, done that. We lost the first one, won the second one, and the second one was that counted. I think this will be a really interesting game. The Virginia team is playing with a great deal of passion and with a great deal of heart. And they really feel like this is key for them, because they feel like with a win that they can get into the national playoff picture. Whereas the Blue Devils are probably, that would be a tough sell with 5 losses at this point in time. So you're playing to be the ACC champion. But here's the other thing that comes into play. National exposure, national exposure, national exposure. There's no substitute for it. You're going to be on national TV at 8 o'clock. Everybody in the country is going to be watching these playoff games. So it comes down to recruiting. And then when you win championships, guess what other people like to do? They like to open their wallet and they like to give money. So the championships bring in a lot of big things for programs, and money is a big thing in this day and time, and national exposure and recruiting exposure. I picked the Blue Devils.
You know what? I'm a little bit torn here, because I've had a lot of success this season picking the Blue Devils, the Duke Blue Devils. And this is the thing I got to, everybody right now this year has been talking about Jake Dickert, right? And the job he's done at Wake Forest. And he's done one hell of a job. But Tony Elliott for Virginia, guys, come on, let's tip our cap to him and make sure he understands what a hell of a job he's done with the Virginia Cavaliers, And so I just think you're going to have 2 teams that aren't used to playing in championship games. Who's going to be the most settled? Who's going to relax and go play ball and execute the game plan at an extremely high level? Execution's the name of the game. And I think that I'm going to have to go at the end of the day with Virginia. I think Virginia is going to win a hard-fought, tough football game.
Don't you have to pick Tony Elliott to be the ACC Coach of the Year? I mean, everybody, it would have been 100% of the people,
no doubt,
at ACC football kickoff that would have picked him to lose his job at the end of this season. And now the guy could be looking at, he could be looking at really a dream season. Even our 1995 ACC championship team that I was a part of at the University of Virginia with Tiki Barber and Mike Groh and a lot of great players under the incredible personality that was George Welsh. Bahump. I mean, this has got to be the greatest team in Virginia history, going back to the Sean and Herman Moore years that, was part of that special 1989 season, Jim, that you were a part of in that championship with Coach Spurrier. That was a co-championship, but we don't talk about that, as you've pointed out before. But this has got to be one of the greatest stories, almost a Disney movie, a Hallmark movie for Virginia football after the tragedy that program has endured.
My heart is with the Blue Devils, obviously, because I was there for so long, but I so admire what Tony Elliott has done, and what a great guy. Tremendous person, just, represents the profession in a first-class way, and they've just done a tremendous job there. It would not, this is a win, in my opinion. These two teams playing, it's a win for the ACC, even though they're not looking at it this way right now because they're so afraid they're going to get shut out of the national playoff picture. But you got two great universities playing against each other in your championship game, and two really good coaches that have done great jobs. But you guys both said it. Tony Elliott, ACC Coach of the Year. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
In college sports, the teams that win aren't always the most talented. They're the most organized. They study the film, they build the game plan, and they execute with clarity and purpose. Your life works the same way. At Organize for Success, productivity expert Emily Parks helps busy leaders create championship-level systems for work, family, side projects, and everything in between. For more than a decade, she's coached clients to prioritize what matters most and eliminate the chaos that slows them down. If you're ready to run your life with the same precision as a top program, visit organizeforsuccess.com and set up your complimentary call. Organize for Success. Win the day. Every day.
Hey, Wolfpack Nation. You already know that when we talk about the great traditions of NC State athletics, Amedio's Italian restaurant is right at the heart of it. Since 1963, it's been the go-to spot for generations of Pack fans. The walls tell the story, the food seals the deal, and every visit feels like part of the family. Whether it's pre-game pasta, post-game celebrations, or just a night out on Western Boulevard, Amedio's delivers every single time. Great people, great plates, and pure NC State pride. Stop by Amedio's, a true Wolfpack original.
Let's shift gears now and talk about the Wolfpack and what they have gone through this year. 42-19. We talked about that win over North Carolina, 5 straight over the Tar Heels. Doeren now confirmed to be back for year number 14, and they'll open up the season in 2026, the first ever college football game in South America as they go to Brazil. Boy, don't talk to the NFL about playing in Brazil. There are a lot of people that wouldn't want to go and do that again. But this is going to be a lot of fun for NC State now to get ready for their bowl game. And Coach Brew, NC State weaponized the quarterback room with Bailey going for over 200 yards and Wilson coming in to score 4 touchdowns on the ground. What makes this so hard to defend when you have 2 guys in the backfield that can play quarterback? It's almost like a double barrel shotgun.
Short yardage situations, you got one guy, and in the other situations, just regular down and distance situations, you got a guy who can win with his feet, who can extend the play, get you more first downs, move the chains, that type of thing. And so I think NC State is very dynamic and very diversified with what they're doing offensively. They're able to throw it, they're able to run it, and then again, you need an extra defender, right, Jim, when you're facing those quarterbacks that can run like they can run, and I'm just telling you, man, the short yardage situations, I tell you, they're hard. They're really hard to deal with when you got a quarterback, a big physical sucker that they run quarterback counter, quarterback power. I mean, he gets his pads down and he's going to go get you a yard or two. And so, again, congrats to Dave and NC State and what they've accomplished this season.
Jim, State held Carolina to only 70 yards on the ground and had them in negative rushing yardage deep into the game. What was the key to DJ Elliott's defense that led to this type of domination over North Carolina? Mid-part through the season started to show some real proficiency with their running game, not their passing game, but to shut down the Carolina running game like that, that was a pretty special effort by the Wolfpack defense.
Well, the Wolfpack defense has struggled at times this year because of injuries. They're down personnel-wise in a lot of situations. But I thought without a doubt, they were the most physical team up front during the game. And that's what created the domination of the run game at that point in time. They also said that we're not going to allow them to run the football. We're going to stuff the box up, and we're going to make Gio and the receivers, other than Ship and Paysor, which, Carolina doesn't have any other than that have had a great deal of production this year. So they just said, hey, we're going to stop the run. And if you can beat us throwing it, then come on, let's do it. And then they were not able to do that, even though I thought Gio played a good game up until that point that he was injured in the game. But I got to ask this question also. I know we're talking about the Wolfpack. Why do you bring in a guy that's not going to be back in your program in the last game of the season to play quarterback? Why don't you look at one of your young guys at that point in time?
I was disappointed that we didn't see Bryce Baker all season, but that tends to make me believe that either they don't have confidence in him or they don't want to show everybody because they're afraid that somebody might come in and lift him. What do you guys think?
I would be for playing Bryce and giving him an opportunity to show what he can do under duress, in the pocket, how he's going to respond. Will he show us enough where we feel like maybe we don't have to go get another guy? He's the guy that we're going to rest, we're going to run this thing with. We're going to go with our guy. This is our guy. So, I think that's the direction I would have went if I was leading the program.
You've been in the state, Brew, as a recruiter, and you know people all around the state, as you do Jim Collins. East Forsyth is where Bryce Baker was a standout quarterback a year ago in the prep ranks. He came to Chapel Hill early, so he's been there since the start of the winter semester in 2025. But he was never going to be the quarterback that they counted on this year because Belichick doesn't like rookie quarterbacks anyway. The guy who they originally had identified at North Carolina to be the quarterback of this team, they didn't know if Max Johnson was going to be healthy. The guy that they bet on, the guy that Michael Lombardi spent money on, was a guy named Ryan Brown. Now, you've not really heard a lot about this guy because they booted him out of Chapel Hill after spring football. But this year, he went from North Carolina back to Purdue, where he started this year, and he went 199 for 338, completed 58% of his passes for 2,100 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions with a 115 quarterback rating. He's not worth a damn. Okay, so Carolina didn't miss as badly on Lopez. At that point, I would think by the time they got around to figuring out that Ryan Brown wasn't going to be the quarterback, there wasn't a lot left in the portal. And then you have to overpay because you're desperate. And they did that with Lopez. He's probably not going to be back. So you guys know how this works better than I do. If you're Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi right now, have you already told Gio Lopez this week that you need to get in the portal and figure something out? Because it's obvious that if you don't have a quarterback like Darian Mensah or CJ Bailey in this, or Robbie Ashford, I mean, Carolina was literally maybe the 5th or 6th best quarterback among the Division I teams in North Carolina this past year. That has got to be priority one for North Carolina football to identify a new QB1, does it not?
The number one thing that they've got to do as they move into the offseason is identify an elite level quarterback, a guy that is going to go and win games for him. I think you need a guy that can use his legs to go get first downs. You need an athletic guy. You need a guy that can make throws down the field, and just a tremendous leader, a tough guy. I've heard from, hey, your toughest guy on your football team needs to be your quarterback, and they need that kind of guy. And I think that they're going to spend a great deal of their time in evaluating that position and going and getting a guy that they feel like can really do some things like Mensah did for Duke.
Drew, let me ask you that. I know you keep up with things around the country. Is that guy the Arizona State quarterback, Levitt? Is that the guy? Is he the number one guy that you go after around the country? You got to have a list together by now, and if your people have not contacted their people at this point in time, then you're behind already.
There's no question, Jim. And it's like, they said James Franklin has already identified Levitt as a guy he'd like to bring to Virginia Tech, and so without a doubt, Jim, that's the type of player that they need to go get. I mean, they got to go get an elite level guy, a guy that truly has elite skills as a quarterback. If they don't get that, they're going to struggle again.
Wouldn't they pay him at Arizona State?
They would, but again, they may not pay him exactly. I mean, what somebody's going to have to do for a guy like that, Mike, is overpay him.
Oh, God, yeah.
He's going to have to be overpaid, and he's going to get a whole lot more money than, the team that knows you the best is probably going to give you your best evaluation as far as the money's concerned. But if you don't know him quite as well and you're at a distance and you're thinking, hey, I got to get a quarterback, I got to get this guy, shoot, you're going to pay him like crazy, man. I don't know how much Mensa got, but I heard he got a ton.
If you're Bill Belichick and Michael Lombardi, is getting that quarterback the absolute key to whether or not you ever see success as the head coach and general manager of the University of North Carolina Tar Heels? I mean, it would seem to me like that would be the only thing that I'd really care about right now, getting one guy that I can look at and not have to worry about a coach on the field leading that offense. And if you got to overpay for that guy, maybe it's a $4 to $5 million hire out there, because if they don't have that, they're not going to be much better next year.
I couldn't agree more, Mike. Jim, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think we've all talked about the entire season, and we're Tim, you and I are both veteran coaches, and Mike, you've been around the game as an administrator. I don't know very many successful pro football, college football, high school football, midget league. Unless you're good at that position, then it's a struggle for you. You have to have somebody that can make plays for you as a quarterback. And so I think that's the most critical position out there for you to go recruit. Yeah, I would say that Michael Lombardi has already spent some time on trying to figure out who the number one target is. And somebody needs to open their wallet, because I would expect that they're going to go try to sign one. I'd be shocked if they didn't.
We got a few minutes left in this week's show, and I will go to this. If I were Lombardi and Belichick, and I had been here for 4 months all the way through the end of April, and I had done any kind of recon on just the other people in the state, just for kicks and giggles, maybe just one night got out and said, man, who are the other quarterbacks within driving distance of Chapel Hill? They should have gone down to Greenville and lifted Caton Hauser away from East Carolina, because that guy had a pretty good year. He completed 66% of his passes, 269 of 408. He had 19 touchdowns. He had only 6 interceptions, had a quarterback rating of 146. Now, he's a senior. He's not going to be coming to North Carolina next year, but man, what a great job by Blake Harrell to keep him around. And East Carolina this past week, 42-3 over Florida Atlantic. We mentioned it earlier. Hauser, 432 yards, leading that Pirate offense in the first half, 524 overall. Man, Hauser can get it done on the ground. He can get it done in the air. He is a true leader for that young head coach in Blake Harrell. And I got to tell you, I wouldn't want to draw straws against the Pirates in a bowl game, because they are playing pretty strong right now towards the end of the season.
They're recruiting their own roster. They're recruiting like crazy to keep kids, maybe take a little less to stay here with your teammates and try to hold your team together. I think that's absolutely critical at this particular point. Everybody talks about going and getting guys out of the portal. Well, how about keeping your players that you got on your roster? And really the decisions, Jim and Mike, who are we keeping and who are we going to ask to take off down the road?
Well, I think that's a great point. Over the next few weeks and days, I don't know what the numbers are, because this coming Wednesday was one of the most exciting days that you had a chance to be a part of. Of course, it was always in February until they moved it, but National Signing Day was a big, big day. You know what? Hardly anybody knows there's a National Signing Day right now coming up. And I have no idea how many commitments North Carolina State, Wake, and Duke, how many they have from the state. I don't know anything about the recruiting process that they've looked at. I was going to look at it earlier today and try to evaluate that to have some type of knowledge on what's going on. But at the same time, you've got to be directing your own roster right now. Who do you want to keep and who do you want to move on? Because you got to get your money right and you got to get your budget set so that you can go out and recruit the team that you want. And I've heard the number 36 on North Carolina. Is that right, Mike?
It is.
And when you're bringing in 36 of those, that means, is the roster limit still 105?
It is, and that commitment, from what I understand, is vacillating right now. They had one 3-star lineman that decided he was going to flip to go somewhere else, and you're going to see some of that. But guys, I mean, you're bringing in 38 to 40 high school recruits. That means you're probably looking at another, couple of dozen players maybe coming out of the portal. Last year, it was 70 out of 105 that North Carolina had as new players coming in. So you're going to have maybe that same number of players coming around, but I don't know. It's hard for me to think that they could be this bad back-to-back years, though there are people that are around the Carolina program a lot more than I am that were saying Saturday night in the press box that this team was going to be awful, that they wouldn't win any more than 4 games next year. They even said, I heard one guy say in the press box that North Carolina would be hard-pressed to even beat a UConn team in 2026, and UConn just lost Jim Moore, their head coach, to go to Colorado State. So they're going to be absolutely swept, from players and coaches all the way through. The culture is leaving stores and is headed out to Colorado State. But I don't think you could be any worse. Could you really be that much worse, Brew?
No. I thought that North Carolina really showed, and Jim, you chime in on this, it showed some pretty solid improvement on the defensive side of the ball. I thought that the defensive end from Delaware, the kid that transferred in, big, long, physical guy, really gave him some length on the edge. I thought the interior of the front was really pretty solid. And so I think that they've got some pieces there to work with. But we all talk about, the biggest piece, and that's the quarterback. They got to get that fixed before they can take any huge team steps forward.
I agree with you, Brew. I thought they made a lot of progress on defense throughout the season. They settled in with who they wanted to play with, and their front's stout now. They're stout inside. The edge guys have a chance to get pressure. The linebacker House is a decent player. The corner that was out and the safety that was out for a little bit of injury time. I thought they made a lot of progress on defense throughout the season. But it goes back. You can't, this day and time, you cannot average 19 points a game and expect to win more than 4 games. And from what I've heard already is that the North Carolina schedule next year is quite a bit more difficult than the one that they played this year, in 2025. I don't know what it is, but I heard that from somewhere along the lines here recently.
Well, Jim, let's look at that schedule, and we're going to talk about the coaching carousel before we get out of here. But just looking at that Carolina schedule next year, they open in Dublin against TCU. TCU kicked their butt in Chapel Hill this year. Maybe they're not going to kick their butt next year when they play in Europe. Then they have East Tennessee State, UConn, and Notre Dame in their 4 non-conference games to start the year. They play at Clemson, at Duke, Louisville at home, Miami at home, NC State at home, Syracuse at home, and they're at Pitt and at Virginia next year. So maybe it's a little bit different, but you never know. And who the hell knows who's going to be good? We talked about it when we were talking about the ACC Championship game this week. I mean, nobody on the planet, not even Manny Diaz or Tony Elliott, would have predicted that Virginia and Duke would be playing for the ACC Championship. So can you really know at all who's going to be worth a damn at any point until they play the games? Because they're guys moving around even in the summertime now.
I mean, for years and years, you're going to have Clemson, you're going to have the regular teams that normally play for championships, and it just, like I said, I think it's great for the conference and the league, great for these coaches and the jobs that they did to get to this championship game. And so, no, I think I think the in a good place. And hey, as long as you go get your quarterback, you'll be fine.
The perfect Wolfpack pregame or postgame spot this season is Sammy's Tap and Grill in West Raleigh. Just minutes from NC State, Sammy's brings more than 65 TVs, a huge menu, 44 draft beers, and an atmosphere built for Wolfpack fans. Burgers, jumbo wings, cold drafts, and all the energy of the pack. Whether you're watching the kickoff, tip-off, face-off, or just gathering with friends, that's where you want to be. Swing by 2235 Avent Ferry Road, Raleigh, and make Sammy's Tap and Grill your Wolfpack game day headquarters. Sammy's, presenting partner of the This Was Then podcast and complete coverage of the NC State Wolfpack on the North Carolina Sports Network.
Hey y'all, David Glenn here from the North Carolina Sports Network. When I'm in Wrightsville Beach, my go-to hangout is Jimmy's, the best local bar for sports fans, live music, cold drinks, and coastal vibes. No matter your favorite team, Jimmy's Bar is the place that sports fans from all across the Carolinas can call their home away from home. The next time you visit Jimmy's Bar in Wrightsville Beach, tell them DG sent you.
Let's talk about the coaching carousel as we close out this edition of Bold North State Football Daily with Coach Brew and Coach Collins, and major moves continue to be made in the coaching hires. A lot of big cycle hires this time through. Bob Chesney today leaving James Madison to go to UCLA, James Franklin to Virginia Tech, Pritchard to Stanford, Summerall to Florida, Silverfield, who we talked about last week, makes that move from Memphis to Fayetteville, and he'll be coaching the Hogs next year. Kiffin, I don't know if anybody heard, Lane Kiffin left where he was coaching at Ole Miss to go to LSU. Alex Golis thought he was going to Fayetteville, but he waited around and got a better deal to go to Auburn. Pat Fitzgerald back in the game, going to Michigan State. Penn State is still open, and maybe some other things will come open here in the next few days. Kentucky also about to buy out Mark Stoops and pay him a boatload of money. What do you think is the best hire that has been made so far in this coaching cycle, and which hire that has been made that we just talked about will surprise people with how well they do, or is there somebody that you think could really be a GOAT in their new job? Who wants to take this one first?
You can't diminish what Lane Kiffin has accomplished, okay? And I think the fact that he's going to an absolute powerhouse in LSU, Jim, I just think that this got a chance to be devastating. He's going to do an amazing job. There's a lot of rumor that Ed Orgeron is going to join him, and we all know about his recruiting prowess. And I just think that it has a chance to be absolutely devastating what they can do and what they can accomplish at LSU. And I think Lane is just a big-time coach. I think he's in a very comfortable place in his life, and he seems happy. This was a tough deal because it's tough to leave a group of kids that you love, that you care about greatly, that has a chance to go into the playoffs and possibly win a natty, and he's not going to be there to coach them. That's a tough deal. The underrated situation, and the guy who I think can really have the most impact, one of the most impacts, is Bob Chesney from JMU going to UCLA. I mean, people are saying, what, has he got to be crazy? He's from Boston. Who the heck's he know in LA? Well, you know what? With the portal now, recruiting and recruiting areas is not nearly as important as maybe it once was. I think Bob Chesney has been a winner. He's been at Holy Cross. I mean, this guy has done a fantastic job. He's taken over a program that's been down in the dumps and hasn't won much lately, but they have a history there at UCLA. And I just really have great admiration for Bob Chesney and the job he's done at each place he's gone to. He has never not won. And I think that's so impressive.
Well, I'm going to jump in, and I think the Lane Kiffin hire to LSU is a good one. But one I think is extremely interesting is James Franklin to Virginia Tech. You're talking about a guy that has a winning tradition. He knows how to recruit to the Virginia area because he's done it for years. He was at Maryland and recruited that area, and he'll hire a good staff and come in with a good staff, and they're willing to spend money. So I think the Virginia Tech hire of Franklin is a good one. And then I think the next one that I'll pick is Summerall to Florida. I think that's an outstanding hire. And there'll be a lot of people and a lot of Gator fans right now are very critical of that and comparing that to Billy Napier. And I don't think that's very fair to Napier because Billy was an offensive guy. John is a defensive guy. So John will hire an offensive coordinator to excite the fans and do the things that they like. Plus, I think it's an advantage that he played in the SEC. He understands what it's like to compete in the SEC, and he's coached in the SEC as an assistant. So I think those two are outstanding hires, and we'll see where some of these others go as we move. But if you're out there and you're looking for a job, there's plenty of them available in the American Conference right now.
Well, I know that Duke, when they hired Manny Diaz, the guy who was right behind Manny in that search was John Summerall. And one of the callbacks that came into play when they were making the decision between Manny Diaz and John Summerall was John Summerall the type of coach that could take being the number 2 sport somewhere. And Duke's always going to be a basketball school. And it wasn't anything that was a negative on John Summerall, but they didn't feel like he was going to be able to really handle that as well. They think that he was going to be a great coach when he went to a football school. And darn it, if I don't think that he's going to be a great job for the Gators. But Brew, I'm going to take this with Chesney. I think Chesney's an incredible football coach. I think UCLA is a terrible job because I have a very close relationship with the UCLA basketball coach. We work together at Cincinnati, and their NIL function is really limited, which shocks a lot of people that UCLA isn't bringing a lot of money to the NIL table in basketball. Okay. And then also on the football side, we've all watched games from UCLA in the last 10 years. There ain't nobody going to the Rose Bowl. I mean, Brew, you played in a Rose Bowl. That's a special place, but it might not be that special a place when you got 25,000 people showing up for a game. And they're now in a lawsuit at UCLA. Martin Germond is a friend of mine. He's the AD at UCLA. He's been around. We both went to Ohio U, that AD incubator for grad school. They're in a lawsuit right now against the Rose Bowl because they want to move their game to SoFi Stadium in downtown LA. They don't want to go out there anymore because it's a mammoth stadium, over 100,000 seats. So I think if somebody can get it done, it's going to be a guy like Bob Chesney, who has gone into some very interesting places over his coaching career and has gotten it done. But man, lots of jobs open right now in the American, lots of jobs coming open right now for assistant coaches. So my hope is that, all of these guys taste success. And I think you're right, Jen, that James Franklin's going to have a pretty immediate impact in Blacksburg, and that could be a lot of trouble for the ACC because the ACC is just getting better and better and better, and that makes it tougher for Belichick to be relevant. Frankly, it makes it really tough for a guy like Mike Norvell to be real relevant. And I have to ask you this before we let you go. For Mike Norvell, you guys know Florida State. Brew, you were part of a national championship down there in 2013. Does having the back-to-back years that they've had in the bottom 25% of the ACC hurt that brand to where people might not want to go there? Or is it, as we talked about before, is it still just a money issue and people are going to go where the money is?
I think it certainly has hurt the Seminoles. To see them get beat like they did the other night, I had to laugh at the end of the game. The AD at Florida State was on his cell phone right there on the sideline at the end of that game. And, you just wonder, it's such a proud university, a proud football university, and had so much success with Coach Bowden, so much success with Jimbo Fisher, and Norvell just hasn't. He's had one decent year, I guess. That program needs to get back to where it should be, and that's playing at a championship level.
Going into this signing day on Wednesday, the number 1 ranked right now is Miami, and Florida State is second. So, their struggles have not killed them with high school prospects at this point in time. So whatever that rating system is, I don't know how many 5, 4, 3 or whatever. I don't know how many stars all those people got. And the Tar Heels are actually third right now. That's as far as I got before I had to get on this show with you guys. So I know those are the top 3, but I think as you look at Miami's in a position right now to cash in on a 10-2 season, especially if they can find a way to get into the playoffs. So the ACC is going to continue to be interesting.
This has been Bold North State Football Daily, an exclusive presentation of the North Carolina Sports Network. Make sure you follow us on social media at the NC Sportsnet. And check out our website that is wall-to-wall coverage of North Carolina sports at ncsportsnetwork.com. Our foundational partner is the North Carolina Pork Council, raising the bacon, raising the bar. Telling the stories of the bold North State, this is the North Carolina Sports Network.